In 1993, another piece of innovation called CRISPR was created and afterward immediately used to foster hazardous trials. In the current day, on board a space station, a guinea pig has been transformed with CRISPR and has cleared out the whole team. Dr. Kerry Atkins, Marlee Shelton, is the last one standing, and she's reaching the heads at Energyne, the ones who fostered the CRISPR Tigan, to help her return. Energyne's chief Claire Whitten, Malin orders Kerry to bring back them Tigan tests, or to not return by any means. Kerry returns for the examples, and the rodent beast pursues her. She comes to the getaway case and is delivered as the station explodes with the rodent still inside, yet the harm to the unit makes it tear open, decompress, and detonate, killing Kerry. The actual examples fly away the nation over. At a creature safe haven in San Diego, primatologist Davis Ecke, Davin the Stone Johnson, led colleagues Nelson, P.J. Byrne, Connor, Jack Curwood, and Amy Branslope to a chimp-walled-in area. They notice a chimp named Peva who endeavors to track down a female gorilla to mate with, however Davis separates them. Peva is disturbed until Davis talks him down tenderly. All at once, a pale-skinned person gorilla named George comes running in, which prompts Connor blowing a gasket and disturbing Peva, who pursues Connor until George pushes him over. George alarms Peva until Davis converses with him too. George ends up being energetic, and Davis thinks of him as his dearest companion. After work, Amy attempts to welcome Davis out for drinks, however he generously turns her down. Nelson then moves toward him and inquires as to why he is nearer to creatures than he is with individuals. Davis says the creatures simply get him. That evening, the Tigan tests begin to land. One grounds in George's nook, one more in the woodland close to a bunch of wolves, and the final remaining one in a waterway in Florida. An independent person is splashed with the gas while the crocodile eats the entire example, and George gets showered with it too. Davis is brought in the following morning to beware of George. Nelson lets him know George is in the wild bear nook. They track down a dead bear in there, and George concealing in dread. He has a scratch blemish on his chest and shows to Davis that the bear went after him first. George ventures out and has now grown up to 9 feet tall. News reports of them Tigan raising a ruckus around town has hit. Cade Caldwell, Naomi Harris, sees the news on television, as does Claire Whitten and her sibling Brett, Jake Silky. Brett is going nuts over how much cash they are losing, while Claire is fulfilled that the Tigan for her venture frenzy tries effective. To deal with what could occur straight away, Claire recommends they enlist a confidential military gathering to fix things. Kate goes to the creature safe haven to attempt to converse with Davis about what has occurred, as she professes to work for Energyne and is liable for fostering them Tigan, so she might have the option to prevent George from developing. At the point when they attempt to proceed to find George, he is confined up until he begins to develop more forceful. He in the end breaks liberated from the enclosure and runs free on the asylum, alarming every one of the visitors. Davis pursues him similarly as the police show up. They point their firearms at George until Davis figures out how to talk George down. Things deteriorate as a chopper soars over and begins hitting George with sedative darts until he drops. In Wyoming, the tactical gathering, drove by Burke, Joe Manganiello, heads into the timberland to recuperate the Tigan test. Burke contacts the Wheatons and illuminates them that the holder is vacant. As the group moves further into the backwoods, they find dead wolves spread out across the ground, as well as a huge paw print in the ground. They are then found and gone after by the changed wolf, nicknamed Ralph, as he goes through the backwoods. The group takes shots at him, yet their endeavors are pointless as Ralph takes them out individually until just Burke remains. He calls to the chopper to take shots at Ralph, however the wolf jumps out of the trees and wrecks the chopper, making it crash down into the lake. Burke is then cornered by Ralph, and he endeavors to take one final stand, however Ralph eats up him. An administration specialist named Harvey Russell, Jeffrey Dignitary Morgan, shows up at the safe haven to carry George onto a plane to keep him contained from the general population. Davis and Kate are brought in to be interrogated too. Davis contends that having George on the plane is self-destruction, however Russell thinks they have everything taken care of. In the air, Russell uncovers, in the wake of glancing through Davis and Kate's records, that Kate had been terminated from Energyne subsequent to endeavoring to take research from the labs, for which she served 13 months in jail. This leads Davis to acknowledge she was lying and that she can't fix George. In the wake of learning of the wolf occurrence, Claire enacts a radio recurrence that calls to the transformed creatures. Ralph and the crocodile, known as Lizzie, advance toward Chicago, where Energyne is found. George, in spite of being kept calmed, figures out how to hear the recurrence also and he begins to awaken. He goes into full fury mode and separates the enclosure. He goes after the specialist as Davis attempts to protect himself and Kate. George nearly kills Russell until Davis intercedes, and George simply takes Russell out. The plane's turbine smothers, and it begins to head down. Davis lashes parachutes onto himself, Kate, and Russell, and they discharge themselves from the plane as it collides with the ground. The three land and see that George endured the accident and is advancing toward the city. Davis clarifies that he has zero faith in Kate after what he's found out about her. She makes sense of that while she was working for Renegine, her sibling was blasted with malignant growth, and she trusted that CRISPR could fix him until she discovered that Clara had been utilizing CRISPR to foster risky weapons. Kate attempted to snatch it however was gotten and secured. Davis then, at that point, tells her how he tracked down George. Poachers got his mom, and a terrified youthful George was concealing under the poacher's truck. Davis and his group recuperated him and killed the poachers, as they had first shot at them. Russell stirs and is grateful to Davis for saving his life, so he chooses to help him and Kate. Davis, Kate, and Russell meet with a tactical group that is keeping observation on George and Ralph as they head into Chicago. They understand the creatures are being called into the city, and that they should figure out how to contain them. Russell assists Davis and Kate with taking a chopper and advance into the city. George, Ralph, and Lizzie show up in the city, prompting a hard and fast frenzy. Davis and Kate show up as the beasts begin destroying the city. Realizing it's basically impossible that they'll have the option to stop them all alone, they head to Energyne to find the remedy that can stop them. Davis handles the chopper, and they run into the structure in the midst of the turmoil. They track down the lab with the remedy, yet the Wheatons think that they are first, and Brett holds them at gunpoint. Claire tells the two that the cure won't make the creatures get back to business as usual, however it will just eliminate their increased animosities. Takes the weapon and shoots Davis in the mskshan prior to taking Kate with her. The Whedons endeavor to board their own chopper and snatch their materials and Kate, however the beasts fire advancing up the pinnacle. George comes to the top and crushes the chopper, driving Brett to take off. Davis shows up subsequent to enduring the gunfire and he saves Kate, yet Claire is compelling them to help her. All things being equal, Davis diverts George long enough for Kate to take a vial of the counteractant that she recuperated and place it in Claire's pack. Kate punches Claire and pushes her into George's way so he snatches Claire and eats her, alongside the cure. In the interim, Brett is practically out the anyway when he runs over Russell, who some way or another made it rapidly into the city. He arranges Brett to give up the PC containing his exploration with the goal that he can be free. Brett joyfully obliges and runs out the door, only to get messily splattered by a piece of falling flotsam and jetsam. Davis and Kate trust that the cure will produce results as George keeps on obliterating, while Ralph and Lizzie come to the top also. Davis and Kate board the Wheaton's chopper so they can get sufficient air to stay away from any serious harm. The beasts all prompt the pinnacle to fall and go crashing down. Davis and Kate make do, and George rises up out of the rubble, presently back to his old self. In any case, Ralph and Lizzie are as yet rampaging, so Davis and George choose now is the right time to stop this. It additionally turns out that the military is attempting to send off an airstrike to take out the beasts, so Kate joins Russell in attempting to cancel it. George fights Ralph and Lizzie. He throws Ralph around, yet the wolf can fly and shoot plumes, while Lizzie is the greatest of all and is near. Davis fools Ralph into floating toward him, just for Davis to move and allow Ralph to fly into Lizzie's way. The croc snatches Ralph by the throat and chomps his head off, gulping it. George endeavors to pound Lizzie, however she has serious areas of strength for excessively she throws George against a post that skewers him. Davis tosses an explosive belt at Lizzie's neck and furthermore has a go at utilizing the chopper's big guns to bring her down, however it scarcely scratches her. Lizzie pursues Davis and almost eats him until George jumps high up with the shaft, and he smashes it into Lizzie's eye and runs it through her head, at last killing her. In the wake of seeing all that occurred, the tactical colonel cancels the strike. George seems debilitated from his injury and clearly passes on, just to uncover he was simply meddling with Davis. The legends begin to leave the city as they wonder where George's new home